it's Alice, and today I'm going to be discussing and reacting to Time's all-time best young adult books list. So last week, Time magazine shared a post titled The 100 Best YA Books of All Time, and I thought today I would run through that list with you, let you know how I'm feeling about what they featured, whether I'm impressed, whether I'm a little bit uninterested, blah, all of my words are apparently going away today, whether I'm a little bit uninterested or whether I am pumped to read all 100 of these books at some point in my life, because I will probably have read basically none of them. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a counter ticking up in the corner, letting you know how many of these books I've read, and I'm just going to tell you the title and the author's name and whether I've read it, whether I haven't read it, if I'm interested in it, if I know a lot about it, and if I'm surprised to see it on this list. I've got a feeling it's been organised from oldest publication date to newest publication date, so I'm expecting some classics to pop up to start with, but if we don't see things like, what am I predicting will be on here? I mean, probably Hunger Games. People love Hunger Games. Probably Twilight. Even though it's not like one of the best written, it did have a massive cultural impact, so I would be surprised if Twilight wasn't featured. I'd love to see people like Elizabeth Acevedo on there. I'd love to see people like Angie Thomas on there. I think that would be great. Love to see Nick Stone. If Dear Martin's on here, I'll be really happy because that is a great book. Yeah, I'll go with those ones because I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head. I mean, Red Rising possibly, because that sometimes is counted as YA, but it's mostly counted as adult, so that probably won't be here. But we can hope. So let's go ahead and have a look and see what Time think are the 100 best YA books of all time. So first on the list we've got Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Haven't read it. It's a classic. I'll probably read it eventually. I didn't really know it was YA. I just thought it was like a children's book. We've then got Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. Same rules apply. I thought it was children's. A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I recognise the title of this one, but I know nothing about it. And again, I didn't know it was young adult. Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I'm impressed to see this on here because I think it deserves more respect for what it is. I've read like abbreviated versions of Anne Frank's diary, but it's good to see her getting recognition on a list like this. We then have The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I've read this one a couple of times. Every time I read it I enjoy it slightly less, so I need to stop rereading it. But this is about a guy called Holden Caulfield. He gets kicked out of school and has a bit of a moody day around the city, reminiscing on how much he hates basically all of his friends. So definitely young adult, definitely relatable. We then got Lord of the Flies by William Golding. Everybody knows what Lord of the Flies is. There's like kids trapped on an island and they like end up killing each other, I think, to like survive. I don't really know. Haven't read it yet. Was planning on reading it at some point, but I can't even see my copy anymore, so that will happen eventually. We then got To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I didn't think this would count as YA. This is about a young black person who is accused of murder, I think. He's accused of murdering a white person. And so the character's dad is like representing him in court, I think. Again, I don't know a lot about it. I'd like to read this one eventually. I kind of got put off after Go Set a Watchman was released and everybody said it was a terrible sequel, because knowing me, I will read the sequel and then I won't enjoy it. But I think this is a book that everybody should read at least someone in their life. From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler by E.L. Konigsberg. I've never heard of this. Ever. I've never seen that written down, ever. And that's such a long title. A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. There was the Le Guin along last year and everybody said it was really boring, so I'm not that enthused about trying this one. I'm interested in one of her other books, The Lathe of Heaven, I think it is, that Sean's got. So I might give that a go first and see how I feel. But it's interesting to see that on here when a lot of people say that it's quite boring. Probably means Lord of the Rings is going to be on here, doesn't it? Oh no. I'll Get There, It Better Be Worth the Trip by John Donovan. Another one that I have not heard of at all. Ever. Nope. Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. I've heard of it, haven't read it yet. I don't really know much about it, but I'm assuming there's a girl called Margaret writing to God. A Hero Ain't Nothing But a Sandwich by Alyce Childress. I've heard of Alyce Childress. I haven't heard of this particular book, but it sounds interesting. Forever by Judy Blume, another one I own and haven't read yet. It's really, really skinny short as well, so I should probably get to that one soon, especially if it's on a list like this. But I've got a feeling it's about like first love and losing your virginity. Might be wrong about that, but that's what's in my head. Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. Again, have never heard of this book. Apparently I'm showing how uneducated I am in this video. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry by Mildred D. Taylor. I recognise the cover of this one, but I don't know anything about the story or the author. A Swiftly Tilting Planet by Madeleine L'Engle. I've heard of A Wrinkle in Time by the same author, but I've never heard of A Swiftly Tilting Planet. Sounds cool though. The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. Another one that I've never heard of the author or the book. I don't know if this might be because time is American. So these might be the kind of books that you get in American curriculum, like must-reads at American schools. So if any of these books are ones that you've had like set reading, like recommended reading lists, and you're in America, please let me know, because that is the only reason I can think that I wouldn't have heard of so many of these. Homecoming by Cynthia Voigt. Again, I've never heard of this. What's happening? The House on Mangrove Street by Sandra Cisneros. I've heard of Sandra Cisneros because Kayla from Books and Lala read a few of their books last year. And I'm interested in a couple of their other titles, but I don't recognise the name of that one. Weetzie Bat by Francesca Leah Block. I recognise the author's name, don't recognise the name of the book, but the cover is really cool. It's like all different block colours, which is quite nice. The Giver by Lois Lowry. This is a dystopian. It's the first book in a series of 4. I don't know anything about it, but I do own the first 2. It was made into a film, and there was like a weird scene when they like sat at a table in the trailer, but other than that, I got nothing on this one either for you. Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. I think that was made into a film. I recognise a film called that, but I haven't seen it. Really uncultured. Holes by Louisa Shah. I've read Millions. I've got Holes, I think, or I've read Holes and I've got Millions. But if I did read Holes, I was like 7 or 8, so I don't remember it at all. But yeah, I've had an experience with this author in the past. If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woodson. Again, heard of the author, have heard of some of their other works. I haven't heard of this specific one. Angus, Thongs and Full Frontal Snogging by Louise Renison. It's really interesting to see that one on there because that one is UKYA, I believe. I think Louise Renison was from the UK. And it's the first book in the Georgia Nicholson series. I haven't read any of them myself. I know Becca in the Books was rereading them last year because they're one of her childhood favourites. So I might be interested in picking these up eventually, but they've just never really appealed to me. And I feel like I might be a little bit too old for them. But I might just try the first one eventually. Monster by Walter Dean Myers. Another one that I haven't heard of the book or the author. But again, the cover looks really interesting. It looks like somebody's going to prison. So that interests me. We've then got Speak by Laurie Hulse Anderson. I read this one. It's very, very poignant. It's about a girl who is, I think she's sexually assaulted by a member of the football team. And so she's trying to build up the courage to speak out about her experience because she's quite unpopular and she's very quiet. And so she doesn't feel comfortable sharing what happened to her. I might be slightly wrong about that, but that is one that I've been planning on rereading because a lot of people have been reading the graphic novel adaptation and I wanted to reread the original story first. Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I've had this one on my NetGalley for years and just haven't picked it up because it was a re-release of... Like, the story came out and it was like the 10-year anniversary re-release, so I need to get to that one eventually. Again, that one's like super duper short, so some of these I would be able to bash out in one sitting. The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. I've read quite a lot of other Meg Cabot, I just wasn't interested in The Princess Diaries, and apparently that's now biting me in the ass. A Step from Heaven by Anne Na. I've never heard of this. I have nothing else to say. Rainbow Boys by Alex Sanchez. never heard of the book or the author. The Sisterhood of the Travelling Pants by Anne Brashares, which looks like Brashares, which is funny because it's a book about pants. But anyway, I'm not really interested in this one. I, again, didn't know it was YA. I think this one's referenced in Friends, so I thought this was like adult contemporary, but apparently it's YA. I don't think it's one that I'm ever really going to be interested in though. Before We Were Free by Julia Alvarez. Again, haven't heard of the book or the author. Feed by M.T. Anderson. Again, haven't heard of the book or the author. The only Feed I know is by Mira Grant. It's interesting to see so many that I don't recognise the titles of though, because if these are genuinely like the best YA of all time, then I've got some stunners to experience in here. I'm going to find some real gems out of this list if I do choose to pick them up in the future. Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. I have never heard of this, but the cover is stunning. I'm interested in this just because of the cover. That's gorgeous. How I Live Now by Meg Rossoff. I hated this. I read this and I hated it. It's basically, it's like a wartime book. A war starts and these kids like, I don't know if they're like trying to travel across the country to like find each other, but it gets a bit incestuous between the girl and one of her cousins, and no thank you, not for me. I just don't really like any of Meg Rossoff's books, so I wouldn't recommend that one myself. Code Talker by Joseph Bruchac. Never heard of. Are you surprised? Elsewhere by Gabrielle Zevin. I've heard of... Oh, I think Gabrielle Zevin had a book about amnesia. Like Diary of an Amnesiac or something similar. Memoirs of an Amnesiac. But I haven't read that. I just own it and I haven't read this either. So I don't know why I'm sharing. The Book Thief by Markus ZUSAK. Haven't read it. I've owned this for years. It sounds interesting because it's like narrated by Death, and it's about a girl who's stealing books to stop the Nazis from burning them. So it sounds really fascinating. I just don't read a lot of historical fiction because it doesn't interest me. So I might like that one if I try and pick it up. The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. So this is the first book in the Percy Jackson series. I'm currently halfway through it. I've been halfway through it since last November. So I'm going to have to start off again. It's like the third time I tried to read this and something about it just won't click in my head. I don't know if it's the sense of humour, I don't know if it's the gods, but this is so well loved. It's really nice to see this on here because it is so loved, but it doesn't often seem to get a lot of appreciation from like critics, which is surprising. American Born Chinese by Jean Luen Yang. Have heard of it, haven't read it. Copper Sun by Sharon Draper. I've never heard of it, but I'm interested in the cover. Tyrell by Kobuth. Same rules apply. I haven't heard of the author or the book. Graceling by Kristen Cashaw. Haven't read it yet. I've read the first chapter, and that was enough to convince me to buy the Fairy Loot special edition set they did at the beginning of the year. Haven't read them yet, but I'm hoping to get to those soon. The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Didn't I say that would be on here? And have I read it? No. But this is the first book in a series where people undertake a thing called the Hunger Games. There are loads of different districts. They have to like kill each other to get food for their region, I think. It's a bit weird. But it's inspired by Battle Royale, and that seems to be getting a lot of hype recently, so I'm not surprised to see Hunger Games on here. Shipbreaker by Paolo Bacigalupi. Never heard of it, but I'm interested in ships, so that one might be one for me. A Carter Witch by Nnedi Okorafor. I've got one of Nnedi Okorafor's other books, I think Lagoon. I can't see it up there at the moment, but I have heard good things about A Carter Witch, and it is one I'm interested in reading, so I will be picking that up eventually. Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I've read and loved the Strange the Dreamer series, and spoiler alert, I'm actually hauling books 2 and 3 in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series this month because I found them in a free book box. So I will eventually be reading the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series because I now physically own all of them. As far as I'm aware, this is like an angel and a demon fall in love, and one of them's called Carew, and they have blue hair, and there's obviously someone else whose name I don't know yet, but it is very well loved. Legend by Marie Lu. I've got those ones just here. This is Legend over here. I haven't read it though. And to be honest, I have no idea what Legend is about. I know what the Young Elites is about, and I've read Warcross. I just haven't read Legend. Let's find out together. He is Day, the boy who walks in the light. She is June, the girl who seeks her brother's killer. On the run and undercover, they meet by chance. Irresistibly drawn together, neither knows the other's past, but Day murdered June's brother, and she has sworn to avenge his death. Oh. So, she doesn't know he's the guy she's trying to kill. Ooh. That sounds like that's going to be really interesting, actually. I didn't know what this was about, or I would have probably read it earlier. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Elias. I've heard bad things about him. So much bad things that Adam Silvera recently pulled a blurb that he'd done for him from the sequel to this book's cover. So I don't really want to get involved in that mess, so I probably won't pick this one up. It's like a really hyped gay romance, but I feel like there are a lot of gay YAs being released at the moment who aren't by problematic authors, so I'm probably going to avoid that one. Codename Verity by Elizabeth Vine. I'm interested in Elizabeth Vine's work, but as I said about The Book Thief, not a huge reader of historical fiction, so I have been putting these off. I do have The Enigma Game, and I do have a couple of her other books as well, but I just haven't picked any of them up yet. Every Day by David Levithan. I loved this book. I gave this book 5 stars. It made me cry my eyes out, and every other David Levithan book I've read, I've hated. So part of me wants to reread Every Day, part of me doesn't want to touch it in case I hate it on a reread because of how much I hate his other books. So it's nice to see that on there though, because again, he's an author who's written like hundreds of books, but he never gets any recognition. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. I've got this one on my Kindle. It was made into a film. I haven't read it though. Sounds like it's going to be too sad for me. When there's literally like a dying girl in the title, I can't cope with the sadness. The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. Of course this would be on it. I hated this book. I hated this book so much. I threw it across the room. I was so angry with this book. I would have given it 0 stars if a 0-star rating existed. That's how much I don't like this book. But I'm not surprised to see this on here. And also, if this is in release date order, it means they've put The Fault in Our Stars on here instead of Looking for Alaska, which is John Green's best book. And that enrages me. Ah! Damn you, time. If You Could Be Mine by Sarah Farizan. Never heard of the book or the author. March, Book 1 by John Lewis and Andrew Aiden. Again, haven't heard of the book or the author. Brown Girl Dreaming by Jacqueline Woodson. This was the Jacqueline Woodson book that I'd actually heard of. I still haven't read it, but I do recognise the title of that one. I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. I have had this since it got published in the UK. My mum bought me these gorgeous sprayed edge editions with like postcards in the back. Haven't read them yet because I've heard they're really, really sad. That one and The Sky is Everywhere. I've heard they're both quite sad, so I haven't read either of them yet, but I am looking forward to reading them eventually. Then we've got Noggin by John Corey Whaley. I remember seeing this one a lot when I used to work in the library because it's got a very distinctive cover and it kind of looks a bit like One Day by David Nichols, and I loved that book. So I don't know why I never picked this one up, but I'm now thinking I might have to see if the library still has it because I am really interested in it. The Crossover by Quaim Alexander. I've heard a lot about this in the last year. It's recently been added to the library app as well, so I was looking at the cover and finding myself a bit interested, so I'll probably pick that one up fairly soon. To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. I loved this book. It's such a cute idea. So she writes letters to the boys that she's like had feelings for and she's never shared them, and she keeps them in a hat box, and her little sister steals them and thinks that she's doing her a favour and she posts them all. It's like, oh no, like what would you do? And I used to write letters to people when I was younger, just as a way to like have an outlet for my feelings, and it was kind of like that, what if I ever found myself in that situation? And I could really empathise with Jean's story. I also really loved her family because they are Korean American, I believe, and their culture matters an awful lot to them, so I felt like I was learning a lot through this story as well. I've never read the third one, so I have been planning on rereading them soon. But I highly recommend this one and the second one. I haven't seen the films yet though. I need to see the films. Then we've got An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. I own 3 copies of An Ember in the Ashes. And I've got it on my Kindle. And I still haven't read it. Because I'm a failure. So hopefully I'll read this eventually. But this follows a girl called Leia, I think. And a boy called, I can see his name in my head and it's just not coming out, but basically he's a soldier for like the enemies and she's trying to like take the army down, I think, so they're enemies, Alyce? I don't really remember what the story's about, but I was meant to be taking part in an Ember in the Ash along over on Bookish Buddy's channel over the last few months, and I just haven't caught up, so I still need to read an Ember in the Ashes eventually. I am bad reader. I'm really bad at this. Dumpling by Julie Murphy. Really interested in it, but as far as I'm aware, it still hasn't been published in the UK, and the paperback's too expensive to buy as an American paperback, so hopefully I will read these eventually. Everything by Nicola Yoon. I loved this one. This one was a 5 stars. Nicola Yoon's recent release, Instructions for Dancing, I loved that as well. That one also got 5 stars from me. Everything is about a girl who has a disease where if she leaves her house, there is a chance she will die. So she lives in what is effectively a big bubble, but then she develops feelings for the new boy who has moved next door, and it makes her question everything, and it's stunning. March Book 2 by John Lewis and Andrew Aiden. I still haven't heard of these, but I'm interested in it. I'm guessing it must be a graphic novel, but like, that sounds cool. More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera, which I have had. Where did my children put it? Oh, apparently that's gone forever now. I've got his other 2. Where has that gone? No. That's like properly gone, isn't it? It's probably because it's got smiley faces all over it. I bet Sophia's taken that. There it is. More Happy Than Not by Adam Silvera. This is basically described as the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but in a YA book, and I think it's queer, but I'm not sure. But it's basically like, if you had your heart broken, would you choose to forget everything, or would you live with the memories so that even though you still experience the pain, you would have those memories? The concept just really interests me. It breaks my heart. It makes me feel so sad. I cried my eyes out when I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and if this is genuinely like that in a book, this is going to destroy me, which is why I haven't read it yet. We then got Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. It's really appropriate that those two are together because Adam and Becky are really good friends in real life. Simon, again, an absolute favourite of mine. 5 stars, loved it. It helped me come to terms with the fact that I'm bisexual, and it helped me be proud about the fact that I'm bisexual. Like, I don't find it something to hide. I don't find it something, like, bad or even that unusual, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I feel like when I was first discovering my sexuality, it was just a case of like, I thought I was weird and I felt odd and like an outsider, but reading Simon was just this massive comfort blanket for me, and I loved it, and it's always going to mean so much to me because of that time of my life. So I'm glad to see that on here. I should have thought of that one myself earlier. I have no idea how many books we're on, but I've got a feeling I've only read like either 5 or 10 at this point, which is embarrassing. I'm not a true booktuber. I don't really read any YA books. 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Haven't read it. I own it. And I've read the Shadow and Bone series, but I want to reread those before I read 6 of Crows, and I've been putting it off because I didn't really enjoy the Shadow and Bone series. So, oops. RUTA SEPETYS, Salt to the Sea. Interested in it. It's historical fiction. I'm probably never going to read it. I have read a sample of the beginning of this one, and I really enjoyed it, but I've just been putting it off. Scythe by Neil Schusterman. Again, an absolute favourite of mine. 5 stars. We've got Somewhere. Where are the babies hidden that one? No, babies. Why do the babies keep hiding all of the books that I'm trying to grab for you? I loved these. We found this copy of The Toll in the Waterstones in Cambridge a week before it came out, and even though we were only halfway through Thunderhead when we found it, we had still finished this before it came out because I love these books. A lot of people don't like the 3rd one. They're wrong. Your opinion is wrong. This book is stunning. I love all of it. So basically there is a girl called Citra and a guy called Ronan, and they both get enlisted by a scythe called Scythe Faraday to be his apprentices. And flipping shoes. So in this world, scythes basically have to kill people because death has been conquered, and yeah, shit in shoes. I'm sorry if you can hear the fact that my neighbours have just decided to start partying at 9:20 at night. That's really considerate of them on a Friday night when I actually have a day off work tomorrow. I'm not going to be sleeping for a very long time this evening because this is probably going to go for hours and hours. Why? If they wake the babies up when they come back, I'm going to kill them. We then have The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon. This is the one Nicola Yoon book I haven't read. I don't know when this list was made, but I'm really hoping Instructions for Dancing makes it on here now, because if it goes that recent, that came out in July, if it goes up to that recently, it's definitely going to make it on. All I know about The Sun Is Also a Star is that it's set in like the course of 24 hours, and it follows a girl who's facing deportation and the boy who falls in love with her, I think. But it's like all the viewpoints of the people who see them walking around the city rather than the viewpoints of the people themselves. I might be making some of that up. But I like books that are set in the course of 24 hours. I like Nicola Yoon. This should be a 5-star for me when I eventually get to it. We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. I can't remember what I rated this one. It was either a 4 or 5, but again, was one that I really, really liked. Basically, there's a boy and he's super depressed and he keeps having dreams about the fact that he can press a button to end Earth. And it's the question of, like, if you had that power, if you could, would you? Is it more important to carry on living with that pain and living with all the bad things that are happening in your life so that everybody around you is also living and surviving, or is it worth just being selfish and making that decision? There's probably like all allegories and lots of deeper meaning in this, but that's like the base of it. But it was really interesting, and there's a great sense of dry humour in this one, which I really enjoyed. We've got When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. I've heard interesting things about their writing, particularly I think it's Bianca and Roja I've heard a lot of good things about. Haven't had a chance to read this one yet, but I really love the cover for it. Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson, another one that I've heard nothing but amazing things about. This one's apparently very sad because it's about a girl who is in prison for allegedly murdering a child, I believe. But again, sounds like it's going to be an absolute tearjerker. We've then got American Street by Ibby Zaboy. I know Ibby Zaboy wrote Pride, but I haven't had a chance to read American Street yet. I'm interested in it though. Dear Martin by Nick Stone. I knew this was going to be on here. I really enjoyed Dear Martin. I think I ended up rating the sequel Dear Justice higher because I just found it a bit more compelling. But Dear Martin is the story of a boy who is stopped by police because they think that he's assaulting his girlfriend when he's actually trying to help her. But it's basically racial profiling. And he's like very well off. He's from an upper class area. He goes to a private school and he has that horrible first experience with police, and it like opens his eyes to the way that a lot of black people are treated in America. So he starts writing letters to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Questioning his beliefs on race and his beliefs on his place in the world and how he can try to be a better person to show people that his skin colour doesn't define who he is. It's hard to explain well how much I enjoyed this book because it was heartbreaking, but it's just so beautifully written, and the same with the sequel, so beautifully written. I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter by Erica L. Sanchez. I haven't had a chance to read this one yet because I don't think it's been published in the UK, but I am really interested in reading it. Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. That's one of Sean's favourite books. That's one of the best books that we've ever read together on his, in his opinion. This was a 5-star for me as well. Basically a boy, I think either his brother or his cousin gets murdered, and he gets on this elevator to go out and get revenge, and somehow on every floor that the elevator stops on, a ghost from his past enters the scene, and it's all told in verse. So it's very, very quick. It's very pacey. There's lots of tension, and it's just, it's a masterclass in how to write in verse. It's beautiful, but also really sad, but also amazing. The 57 Bus by Dashka Slater. I'm interested in this one. I've got a feeling it's about a bus fire. I think somebody sets the bus on fire, and it's like the fallout from that, because it's a kid that you wouldn't have expected to suddenly turn into an arsonist. I might be wrong, but I'm interested in it either way. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. We have that one nearby, right behind me. I love The Hate You Give. It's heartbreaking, but it is so necessary, and it just breaks my heart every time I think about this book because it is still so relevant. This came out 2014, I believe. No, it must be later than that. 2017. 2017 this book was published, so that's 4 years ago. And a lot of books that were published 4 years ago aren't relevant any longer because technology has moved on and social media has moved on and things have changed. But the way that black people experience police brutality in America just doesn't ever seem to change, and it breaks my heart. And the fact that Angie Thomas has written this book, which is a love letter to the black youth of America and is a tirade against all kinds of police brutality and racial profiling and racism in America, and it's had such a profound impact across the world, and still nothing seems to be changing. It really does break my heart, but I'm so glad that she wrote it because it does shine a light on an extremely important topic. And if you're somebody who doesn't know a lot about those topics and you haven't read this yet, pick these up because it will help you educate yourself, and it certainly helped me educate myself, and it helped me to become a lot more passionate in how I feel about racism and race. So if you haven't read these books yet, these are must-reads. Like, if this was based off of like a best, like worst to best out of the 100, like 100 down to number 1, those would probably be number 1. The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimeline. Haven't heard of this one. Interested in that cover though. We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. I've read Hold Still by Nina LaCour and I really enjoyed it. Hoping to read more of her writing eventually. When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandia Manon. I loved this book. This was another 5-star for me. So they are getting some very, very good books on this list. So When Dimple Met Rishi is about a girl who just wants to do tech. She just wants to do like technology, coding and things like that, and her parents are just more interested in her finding a husband and settling down, so they set her up to meet with this guy, and they want it to be an arranged marriage, and she thinks that he is in on it and he's also not really into it, but she's like very against him, so it's kind of like an enemies to lovers because she's so against him just because of her parents meddling, but they still end up being drawn to each other. And it's so cute. I loved this so much. I need to read more of Sandia Manon's writing because I cannot recommend When Dimple Met Rishi enough. I loved it. It was so good. A Very Large Expanse of Sea by Tahira Mafi. I haven't read this one. I've been thinking of trying to get hold of a copy of it because I've heard people saying that this and An Emotion of Great Delight, which is her recent release, are really, really good because they're contemporaries and she normally writes YA fantasy. But I haven't had a chance to get to it yet. Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I am interested in this one, but I don't know what it is about this that isn't making me pick it up. I don't know if it's because of all the kind of controversy between Tomi Adeyemi and Nora Roberts, because it kind of frustrated me a little bit. But I haven't picked this one up yet. I probably still will, because I am still interested in it. Darius the Great Is Not Okay by Adib Karam. Never heard of this. Love that cover though. The Astonishing Colour of After by Emily X.R. Pan. Still really interested in this one. Love that cover. I don't know anything about what this is actually about, but I'm just in love with that cover. The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I knew Elizabeth Acevedo was going to end up being on here. She is brilliant. So, 2 of the books that she's currently got released, Clap on Your Land and The Poet X, are written in verse. One of the books that she has released, which is With the Fire on High, is written in narrative prose. Poet X is amazing. It's about a girl who's like trying to reconcile her parents' religion with her religious beliefs and the way that she wants to live her life, and she's doing it all through the medium of poetry. So she writes her own poetry, but then obviously the whole story is told in verse, so you get these 2 different styles of poetry without as like weaved into the story too. Just perfect. 5 stars for that one. Frankly in Love by David Yoon, who is Nicola Yoon's husband. So we got a power couple going on this list. Haven't read that one yet. Heard some pretty meh things about it, but I'm still interested in trying it. Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki, illustrated by Rosemary Valero O'Connell. I didn't know that was a graphic novel. I've seen that cover before and I've heard people mention that book before, but I didn't know it was a graphic novel, and now I'm more interested in it. Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian. Never heard of it. Love that cover. Pet by Akwake Emizi. I've heard this one mentioned by Kayla from Books and Lala, as I mentioned her earlier. Don't really know too much about this one, but I've got a feeling it's a horror? Correct me if I'm wrong. With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. Didn't I just mention the fact that she also did a book in prose? And now it's also on this list. So we've got somebody who can write in multiple genres, multiple styles on this list. That proves that she is queen of her craft. The Black Flamingo by Dean Atta. I'm getting it down. Oh, I'm getting it down. I love this book. We've got some UKYA and we've got some UKYA getting some appreciation. So Dean Atta is a gay UKYA author. He's a poet and he does a lot of autobiographical poetry. He has an adult poetry collection and he has the Black Flamingo out so far. It's told in verse because poetry. But this is about a boy called Michael. He is gay and he goes to university and creates a drag act called the Black Flamingo. And you'd think this would just be set at university and this would just be his university story, but it's actually his whole life. Like, you join him when he's like just been born and then you get to follow his whole life. And if you're not completely swept away and blown away and just in love with the story by the end of it, you do not have a heart. Like, this is stunning and I cannot wait for more Dean Atta work. I'm just going to gobble up whatever he releases for the rest of time. So glad that's on here. Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I'm so happy. This is such a good list. Felix Ever After I read last month. I'll link my wrap up for you, but I love this as well. Felix Ever After is about a transgender teen called Felix. They get a gallery made with their old pictures and they get dead names and they have to try and investigate who's done it. Meanwhile, they're in like a bit of a semi kind of love triangle going on, and I just loved everything about this story. Like, I want to reread this one already. I loved the romance. I loved the discussions about sexuality and gender and identity and belonging, and it's just perfect. Another 5 stars. The music has gotten even louder. I hope this video is over soon. We've got Stamped by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. Ibram X. Kendi is the author of How to Be Anti-Racist, and I really enjoyed that book. Jason Reynolds, the author of Long Way Down. Haven't read this collaboration between the two of them yet, but I'm very interested in it. The Henna Wars by Adiba Jagada. So this is a female-female love story. I think it's set in Ireland because the author is Irish, so it's interesting to see an Irish story in this list. But I've heard amazing things about this one and about the second book that she wrote, which was Hanny and Ishu's Guide to Not Dating. Definitely interested in those. We Are Not Free by Tracy Chi. I think I've heard this one recommended by Hayley and Bookland a few times, but I recommend that just because of the cover, because it's stunning. I think this was historical fiction as well. You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. I haven't had a chance to read this yet, but this is a girl who wants to win the prom queen crown because then she'll get a, what's it called? Scholarship to go to the college of her choice. So she's actually competing against another girl who also needs it, and then they fall in love, I think, which just sounds amazing. I can literally feel the bass vibrating through the sofa because of how loud their music is. This is wild. Like, my feet are trembling. And then we got Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley. So this is a new release from this year. I don't know much about it. I've got a feeling it's set on a reserve and there's a murder. But the cover on this one's just stunning. I've got this one on my NetGalley, so I do need to read this one really soon. And that's actually it. Okay. Wow, so I have not read many of these, is what I'm learning. I love the diversity in this list though. There's like trans rat, there's lots of different authors from different backgrounds. There's lots of different races. I'm glad to see such a wide range of books. Like, this is so nice. There was no Twilight, which was good because we didn't really need it on here. No Red Rising, which I'm fine with because, as I said, it's mostly adult, but like, Dean Atta made it, Elizabeth Acevedo made it, and Nick Stone and Angie Thomas. I'm so happy. Like, so many of my faves have been represented in this list. And yeah, there were a couple of books that I didn't really like on here, but most of them were ones that I gave 4 or 5 stars, mostly 5 stars, like really easily. So I think we can trust Time. Like, we can get our book recommendations from Time magazine because they seem to know what they're talking about. And I might just have to read some of the ones that I haven't read yet soon. Especially some of the classics, because I should probably read more classics at some point. Yeah, I should probably think about doing that. I hope you enjoyed this video and the fact that it's turned into a spontaneous dance party. If you liked this video, please give it a like, and if you'd like to subscribe, we'd be super duper grateful. We post new videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. Normally our neighbours are quiet, so we don't normally have the spontaneous dance party, but if you're enjoying it, let us know. We can always put in some like boogie beats in the background if that is something that would make you enjoy this channel more. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments how many of the 100 books that you've read, because Sean will have put the total of mine up on the screen somewhere beautifully for us. I'm guessing probably around 20, because I feel like I had read quite a lot of the ones at the end. Like I'd read Dear Martin, I'd read The Hate You Give, I'd read The Black Flamingo, I'd read The Poet X. So I feel like possibly around about 20. If I'm really far off, I am so embarrassed. And I'm going to try and have read at least 50 of these by some point in the near future. Thank you for watching. Bye. Hey everyone, it's Alice, and today I'm going to be reacting / responding / sharing. No, this is too wordy. Let's try that again. I'm trying to grab for you. Ha! I loved these. We